back every day to see what's next.
Welcome to Women Thriving Unapologetically with Lynsie McKeown. Over the next hour, you will hear raw, honest, and inspiring conversation between Lynsie and her guests, discussing how to thrive, live joyfully, and abundantly in spite of life's challenges. Now, here is your host, Lynsie McKeown.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Women Thriving Unapologetically. I am your host, Lynsie McKeown, and I am very excited about our guest today. I say that every week, but every week I get even more excited about the next one coming on, because today's episode is all about moving from fear to belonging and all around this idea of language. And do you believe your words have power and impact? And so we'll be talking about the impact of dehumanizing, degrading, and diminishing language in our culture, and how we can shift into language that is more amplifying of abundance and kinship, belonging, and love. But before we dive in and invite our guest onto the show, as always, let's just take a moment to stop, pause, and breathe. So wherever you are, just take a moment to stop. You can stop by sitting down, you can stop by laying down or standing, and just take a few moments to connect to your breath. And just simply beginning to deepen your breath into full, even rhythms. And what is beautiful about taking deep, full breaths is that we can soothe our nervous system. And we can shift our brain from a reactionary state to a more receptive state. So we start to activate the part of our brain that is responsible for language, responsible for emotional control and reasoning. So take a couple more breaths in and out. Simply by shifting our breath, we can regulate our thoughts, our emotions, and our actions. And so with that, let's come back to this moment and to the show, and a perfect time to invite Stephanie Chee Barea into our Women Thriving Unapologetically sanctuary. So Stephanie is a creator, educator, and entrepreneur. She is the founder of Her Festival, which I have attended, and it is amazing. And she is the founder of Mela.Yoga, an award-winning sacred learning space in the San Francisco Bay Area. She published her first mantra album, Igniting Protection, in 2019, and has also been featured on Thrive Global, Omnes.live, Down East Magazine, and the Rangeley Highlander. With over 22 years of formal teaching experience, she is both a practitioner and educator of the science and philosophy of Tantric Hatha Yoga and an initiate of the Sri Vidya Tradition, which is a 5,000-year-old living tradition of the Himalayan Masters. And she has over 1,000+ hours of formal training in yoga and meditation. So I am delighted to have Stephanie on the show. Welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you, Lynsie. So glad to be with you today.
Yes. And so you're tuning in from Rangeley, Maine, correct?
Yeah, I'm here in the kind of deep rural forest and mountain region here in northwestern Maine. This is the place of my birth, not too far from here, and certainly where I learned to be with nature, be in nature, and really find my belonging here. So it's perfect that I'm here and talking to you from this place.
Yeah, and I just recently had the experience of coming to Her Festival there in Rangeley, Maine, and I have to say it is really a very special place. So let's go ahead and dive in. You know, this show is all about women thriving unapologetically. So with this topic today around language, and how do you believe as women in particular are impacted by the language that our society uses, these societal messages of that we see perpetrated or all constantly, the messages of fear and competition and scarcity?
Yeah, that's a big question.
It's a really big question. So let's not mess around. Let's just jump right in.
Yeah, yeah. Well, certainly in American society, and I would even go so far as to say Western society, there are these echoes of messages, these ways of being a woman that have created what I believe are both separation and a kind of fracturing, not only of our relationship with other women, our relationship with other men, our relationship with ourselves, our communities. There are a few things for me, I think personally, that I've seen, experienced in terms of these messages of fear and competition that I know are not unique to me. This in particular is really potent to me in terms of the I need to be of value. This shadow that many of us as women, and particularly New England women, I'll just speak for us here in this region, that is almost a leftover Puritan ideal of needing to work hard all the time in order to prove your worth in the world. And if we pair that with a kind of societal inequity of gender roles, or even we start to look at gender stereotypes, certainly this idea of women as commodities, or even us as being property, us as being commodities that only have their worth from our doing what it is that we accomplish in the home, or with our roles as mothers, with our roles as partners, with our roles as professionals, and potentially even our roles as house managers, householders within our society.
And I can say that, not being from the New England area, that I feel that, and I'm sure so many other women feel that need to, find the validation through hard work. I think it's also just in our society in general that we have to work hard and burn the candle at both ends, that we have to produce something to prove our worth. But it seems to be even more so with women, in my opinion, and I'd love to hear from you, that because just the gender role in general, we have to, if we're going to go out into the workplace now, we have to perform even harder to be seen as valuable as our male counterparts. But then we also have to perform a certain role and duties and provide value in our homes.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And certainly there's also a layer of conditioning of how it is that we compete with one another as women for attention and love. This scarcity mindset that starts to set in, not only because I'm maybe not doing at a level, or I am not performing at that level, whatever that level is, in whatever role that we want to fill in the blank here. But in any room of women, we were just together at her festival, right? The tendency, I would say, our societal tendency as women is to come together and to size each other up. This like, okay, well, she's prettier than me, she's skinnier than me, she's smarter than me, she's more successful than me, she has more of whatever it may be, more happiness, more joy, more stability, a more supportive husband, more supportive family. There's a kind of ranking, right? Kind of competitive ranking that we do. And this is really just that echo, I believe anyway, this echo of us feeling as though we are, we need to reach or perform at an ideal state, right? Whatever that societal ideal state is. And the truth is, there's always going to be someone in the room who's smarter than me, taller than me, skinnier than me, you know, all the things, more beautiful than me, more charismatic than me. There's always going to be that, if that's what we're looking for, you know, and that's really this kind of like training of our minds, this entrainment and conditioning towards the not enoughness and the scarcity mindset that just becomes so insidious, I think, in our own view of ourselves, our relationship to ourselves.
Yes. And, you know, and I'll say this without shaming myself, is that when I showed up for her festival, I mean, I did exactly that. I'm looking around, I'm just taking in the room, I'm taking in everyone. And I wanted to be there in community. It was something I really wanted to experience, just be surrounded by women in community. And yet I could feel myself doing that. And, you know, I practiced this long enough that I could witness myself doing it and trying to feel into, well, where is this coming from? Which leads me to the next question. Where do you feel like this, you know, we say it's kind of, we've been conditioned to believe this way, but where does it really stem from? Why have we been conditioned this way to believe that we have to be in competition and prove our worth?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just speak personally first from my own story. I know that my own journey has been one towards belonging my entire life. I was born here in the state of Maine to a white mother and a Korean father. So I'm biracial, and the town where I grew up in and the community where I was looking to belong in was one in which I just didn't look like anybody else, right? It was a homogenous white community on the coast of Maine, and the only ones I could see who I looked like were my brothers and my father, not even my mother I looked like. So there was certainly an otherness to my existence that showed up from the very beginning. I think over time I can say that it became more internalized. I had an idea that I was different. I had an idea that I didn't somehow belong, that people saw me differently, treated me differently. And I don't even want to put a charge, like a positive or negative, on it right now. I knew I was separate. Or I believed that I was separate based on my reflections, based on my experiences, both in the school systems and in my community, my larger community. And this, the kind of othering that I experienced, I think really became more amplified when I reached adolescence. No big surprise there, right? Like there's this way in which we in adolescence begin to really look for that sense of belonging outside of our families, that our minds and our brains are wired to go outside of our immediate households to look for that sense of belonging. We see it in, if any of you have teenagers in your lives, adolescents in your lives, you probably have seen this play out where or you can think back to middle school where you wanted so desperately to belong. You wanted so desperately to be like someone, to fit in. And also you wanted so desperately maybe to be unique, you know, that push-pull. And that belonging for me really became more potent in those middle and high school years, where I began to experience quite a bit of verbal and emotional abuse from some of the other girls, actually, in my middle and high school. It became vicious, kind of dehumanizing, degrading, I guess it would be called bullying these days, right? These kinds of bully behaviors. And it really was a way that I began to really retreat still into this kind of internalization of not enoughness, this internalization of, oh, if they're treating me this way, it must be so.
Yeah.
It must be so.
And so it's interesting because this sense of, wanting to be unique, yet also wanting to belong. And sometimes I feel that wanting to belong also creates a sense of safety in that community. And so how can we, as women create, work with the tendency to judge others or compare ourselves to other, yet still be in a community where we can actually, feel our uniqueness and appreciate our uniqueness, but also feel that connection to our community in a way that's very loving and full of that, what you had mentioned when you sent me the description that you want to talk about for the show is kinship.
Yeah, kinship. As much as we've been talking about the ways in which we, as women, are trained to find the faults, find the differences, even shred those who we believe are somehow falling short of these societal ideals. And in my experience, that projection outward really is often symptomatic of our own relationship to our own selves, right? And beginning to find that seat of observer, that place that you just, led us into at the beginning of the show, where we're even connecting with breath, but also observing breath, this idea that we are connecting with some of these attributes of whether it be one end of the polarity of belonging or the other end of the polarity, which is the uniqueness. That is, I would say, both of those qualities, holding both of those qualities within yourself is the practice of yoga, right? This idea of holding polarities. Mm-hmm. But finding a sense of belonging in your own being is really, it's the soil, it's that fertile ground, it's the foundation from which we don't really remember how to operate. I'm not familiar or as familiar with what it means to really come from a place of wholeness when I'm in a large group of women, or when I'm in any large group, or when I'm beginning to connect with others in my community. If I'm not myself anchored and steeped in my own sense of belonging to myself, my own sense of wholeness, where all aspects of myself are no longer suppressed or held in a place of shadow or shame, then I can truly show up, right?
Yes.
That in and of itself makes you unique because
Makes
so many
very
of us,
unique. Yeah. I
so
love that you
us
say that. Yes, because what I'm hearing is that, we can be in community, which is actually very healing to be in community, but also hold our own uniqueness, that we can hold these two different ends of the spectrum when we are comfortable with who we are, like we have come into an understanding of our own wholeness, that we're not split or fractured within our own selves. And that way, when we step into a community, we're not feeling separate because we have actually worked on bringing ourselves back into wholeness and appreciation.
Mm-hmm.
Did I sum that up well?
I think so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I'd like to talk a little bit more about how we can come into wholeness, because this is so important, because if we're fractured, within our own selves, and then we're out there in the world and just constantly seeing ourselves as separate and judging ourselves and hence judging other people, then it leads to that that languaging, whether we verbalize it or not, whether it's within ourselves or we're actually verbalizing it to other people or upon ourselves, that does not lead to the society that we want to live in. And how can we start to change our languaging? And how can we start to do that inner work that can bring us into wholeness? That's another big topic, right? We're not shying away from the big topics today. So what we'll do now is we're going to go to our first break of the show. And but don't go anywhere. We're talking with Stephanie Chee Barea, and she's amazing. And we're talking about language and the power of language, and how that can create feelings of separation from within ourselves and our communities, and how we can start to change that dialogue within and around us so that we can live with more in a more loving and in a sense of kinship with our fellow human beings. Okay, so we'll be right back.
All right, we're all clear.
Thanks, Gabe. Okay, how did that feel, Steph?
Good. I was definitely nervous.
It's okay. Second, we'll be like, we'll roll with it this time. Yeah, just take it. Oh, just take a deep breath, right? Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, and we're also talking about really big topics too, which can cause us to feel a little bit nervous as well. But it's okay. You're doing great. I feel really good about it. And is there anything in particular that you really want to dive into that's really resonant? That I know all this whole topic in general is very personal to you, and you're passionate about it. So I want to make sure we touch on what lights you up and you can sink into.
Yeah, I mean, towards the end, we'll probably get into more about mantra and chanting as sound healing and working with that. I don't know. We'll just keep
How do you feel about sharing, what degrading language is? Because sometimes we don't even understand what that can
20
be.
seconds.
So maybe in your story about,
my mom and going to supermarket, my supermarket stories. Yes.
Yeah.
VoiceAmericaEmpowerment.com.
You're listening to Women Thriving Unapologetically with Lynsie McKeown. Have a question for Lynsie or her guests? Want to share your story? Email Lynsie at thrivingunapologetically@gmail.com. That's thrivingunapologetically@gmail.com. Now back to the show. Here again is Lynsie.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Women Thriving Unapologetically, and me, your host, Lynsie McKeown. Today, I'm joined by Stephanie Chee Barea, and we're talking about the power of language. And so for this second piece, I'd love just to talk about, what is empowering language? What is disempowering language? What does it mean to, what is dehumanizing language? So what do you have to say about that, Stephanie? I have my own ideas, but I want to hear from you first.
I would say that there are these more obvious layers, certainly, right, of the kind of name calling that we can both participate in and witness. There is a kind of dare I say pleasure in judgment and tearing others down that I believe actually has become even more amplified in this age of social media.
Well, it's almost like creating community, but a toxic community.
Yes, exactly. And as my mentor, Pandit Rajmani Tigunait, sometimes says, you can't hate the hatred. You can't hate the hatred, because then you're just sowing seeds for more hatred.
That is so powerful,
right? We're just continuing to feed that stream. But even more than that, I'd say on a deeper level, some of this degrading or diminishing or even dehumanizing languaging can come from kind of unexpected places, ways in which we might not even be aware that we're engaging in these kinds of violent languaging. And, when I talked a little bit about some of the ways in which I internalized this othering that I experienced as a young child, growing up clearly non-white in a very white community. And for me, from the time I was probably 4 or 5, I have really clear memories, like very clear memories of being with my mom at the supermarket and people not only staring at me because my mom is blonde hair, blue eyed. I am not that. I look very much browner and I have very Asian looking eyes. So I remember being stared at as though no one really knew what to make of me. And the way that they would ask, what are you? Or what is she? Was, I'm sure, coming from a place of genuine curiosity, right? On the other hand, when you hear that, what are you? What are you? And all you really want to say is, I'm a 5-year-old girl.
Yeah.
I'm a human. It begins to make you feel as though, and I'll even use the word alien, right? You feel like the alien, you feel like the weirdo in the room, like what is going on? Why do people not understand what I am?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
How is it that this kind of languaging begins to not only it begins to separate me from my community, right? But right now, me from humanity, my own humanity, and the humanity that I share with all of creation. And the dehumanizing behavior, is something I believe most of us who live in the world as embodied women have experienced before, whether it's objectifying language, right? Or even more of the potent less than narratives that we can receive from strangers and even maybe from people who are closest to us.
Mm-hmm.
The more abusive or violent language that many women have experienced in their own homes, not only in their childhood homes, but potentially in their homes of their choosing as adults, whether it be in a more obvious way in an abusive relationship with a partner or a parent or sibling. So, for me, cleaning up my language is a project that I have really begun to embark upon. And I think it's something that feels more potent to me these days because I have been unwinding these beliefs that I took on about myself, that I am, not only that I am less than human, but, in my own personal story that also involves a kind of a history of abusive relationships with men, romantic relationships with men, a kind of belief system also just around me not only being less than, but me being trouble, that I'm trouble, that I'm no good, that I bring men down, that I humiliate them. These are all messages that I, again, just continued to internalize and started to hear as my own voice.
And I love how you have highlighted, not just, and maybe because like you said at the very beginning, is that the languaging that, people from your community were using when you were very young, you said it was probably just out of curiosity. They're not intentionally trying to do harm, but it was very harmful. And yet, then there on the opposite end, when you get a little bit older, you actually have very powerful abusive languaging coming at you as well. So it starts at a very young age. So it doesn't have to be this powerful, very violent languaging. It can be very subtle and still have the same impact if you hear it repetitively, because we learn through repetition, right? We're hearing these messages, whether they're subtle or powerful, and we're starting to internalize them. And then that internalization creates your own belief systems about yourself. And therefore, that creates the separation from your own humanity. It creates the separation from your community and your ability to be actually to feel the wholeness within you, and also the wholeness that you can feel when you are in a loving community. So how, you said you started to clean up your own language. And of course, I'm assuming that has to start with wanting to and being aware. So can you tell us a little bit more about how we can change the use of our language and be aware what is degrading, what's not degrading, what's loving, what's not loving?
Yeah, I'll bring it back to that space of observer, witness, that we've talked about a little bit. This way of beginning to observe your own thoughts and language, that before anything comes out of my mouth as language, spoken language, before anything gets typed into a keyboard, there's a thought. And from that thought becomes it becomes a more tangible expression, right? It manifests out in the world as written word, as spoken word, as action, right? So getting back into that realm of thought, which is a more subtle place, and it might even be that you begin to notice the kinds of things you say out loud, the way that you, or I'll just speak for myself, right? The way that I'll make a mistake, or I'll dare say, look in the mirror, not like what I see. and that thought that sometimes actually verbalizes as, I look like crap today, or like, who do you think you are? All of these kinds of echoes of voices, these ways in which I create self-harm on the level of thought to myself, or harm to myself on the level of thought, maybe is a better way to think about it.
And we might not even recognize that those little things that we say to ourselves internally or even externally, like, oh, I look like, I look horrible today, or who do you think you are? Or you're just like micro criticizing yourself is actually starting to wear down your ability to be connected to wholeness, your ability to see yourself clearly. And if you keep doing this in little ways, it's like just chipping away at yourself.
And again, like feeding that stream, right?
Feeding the beliefs.
Feeding the beliefs. So much, and we talked about this earlier, so much of our society is giving us these messages, however you feel about capitalism, right? This less than feeling, right? I need more, or I need to be more, which feeds that scarcity, which then just separates us from really these capacities for abundance, these capacities, these thought streams that are more of connection, love, abundance, these qualities or attributes of mind that may not feel familiar and may not be the ones that we nourish. You remember that Saturday Night Live skit where, I think Stuart Smalley, and he's, sitting in front of the mirror. I don't know if you remember that show.
I don't remember that one.
And giving himself affirmation, you're good enough. How it sounds corny, and it is. And also, what if that was happening at the same volume and measure as some of this other less than stuff?
Yeah.
How often are we checking our own mental diet, our own, what it is that we actually walk into our days with in terms of our own mindset? So, my personal practice of really getting my mind right, which truly aligns with a place that feels more grounded in spirit, more grounded in wholeness. That is how I start to move out into my day. And it just, it's like when I was pregnant, everywhere I looked, everyone was pregnant. Or when I was shopping for my car, and I was looking at a particular model of car, it was all I saw.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What are we looking for? Is certainly one of it. But as we begin to see more abundance, as we begin to see more of that which keeps us in relationship to others, in connection to others, this kinship I was talking about, then the less amplified, the less loud some of this other stuff becomes, just because we're gaining more familiarity with it.
Yeah. And with that comes strength. And, I love that analogy. Is like, okay, when you're pregnant, everyone else is pregnant, and when you're in a particular mindset of awareness, you're going to start to see more of that. And so for me personally, when I started to pay attention to what I was saying and thinking, I was like, oh, it was mind blowing, because I was like, oh my gosh, I am such a negative person. I didn't realize how harmful my language was until I started to pay attention to it. And then I had a little moment of depression, because I was like, oh my gosh, this is awful. No wonder what I have in my life is not reflective of what I deeply desire. And so it took a lot of awareness to clean up the languaging. And it's still a daily thing, because it's very easy to turn on the television or go out and listen to other people's dialogues who are not aren't doing this practice, and you can feel that pull back to some old habitual patterns of thinking. So it really has to be this consistency around, okay, what are my thoughts? Because my thoughts are going to lead to how I feel and what I'm going to speak. And then my actions are going to reflect that. So I love how you've brought that in, that, okay, if we just start to change our awareness and stay with it, then what we're going to become more and more aware of is the abundance, once that becomes strengthened and stronger than the habit of looking towards what is wrong, or the critical thinking, or, everything is awful in this world, and therefore everything will always be awful in this world. So thank you for sharing that. That was amazing. And so I know you have some amazing tools that are incredibly powerful from your lineage that enables us to actually start to strengthen our resolve and help strengthen and bring us back into wholeness. And what I love is that it's much simpler than people think that it is, but it does take some consistency, I'm sure you'll share with us. But we do have to go to our second break, our last break of the show. So when we come back, I'd love for you to share with us a very powerful tool that you've used to help, bring yourself back into wholeness and to reframe how you think about yourself and others and the world around you. So with that, don't go anywhere, and we'll be right back with Stephanie Chee Barea.
All right, all clear.
Thanks, Gabe. Okay. How are you feeling now?
Good.
Okay, good. Yeah, I think when we come back, we can just go right into the accessible practices, because I want to make sure we have plenty of time for that. So we'll just dive in, and if we go through it quickly, there's plenty of other questions I'd love to ask you, but if not, I don't want you to feel rushed. I want you to just really sink in and offer it because it's such an important thing to offer our listeners. So those of you that are listening on Facebook, don't forget to put a comment in the comment section for Stephanie, and we can look at that after the show and answer any of your questions. And of course, you can always post them. And if we don't get right back to you, then we will later on, for sure. Yeah. I'm very excited about this. Okay, thanks, Gabe.
It's your world. Motivate, change, succeed. VoiceAmericaEmpowerment.com.
You're listening to Women Thriving Unapologetically with Lynsie McKeown. Have a question for Lynsie or her guests? Want to share your story? Email Lynsie at thrivingunapologetically@gmail.com. That's thrivingunapologetically@gmail.com. Now back to the show. Here again is Lynsie.
Welcome back to Women Thriving Unapologetically. We are honored to be having a conversation with Stephanie Chee Barea on the power of language. And if you were with us for the first portion of the show, we were talking about the power of language and how it can create this sense of separation or unity. And Stephanie is now going to share with us a very powerful practice from her lineage of yoga and meditation that will actually help us to dissolve some of that separation that we feel from our own wholeness. So Stephanie, I'm very excited about this portion.
Yeah, thanks. So I'd love to share with you today a little bit about this practice of mantra or chanting, and we're going to work with Sanskrit, which is, this ancient language that some of you may be familiar with from maybe going to a yoga class. You may have chanted Om before or heard it before. Some of you may be familiar with different mantras or sacred language in other modalities, including in English. There's certainly mantras in that way.
Oh, before we dive, that brings up a really important question I have for those that are not familiar with mantra practice. So, one, can you tell us what mantra is, and what is the difference between a mantra and an affirmation, and the difference between saying it in English versus, say, for example, this sacred language of Sanskrit? One better than the other?
No,
I'm not setting you up, I swear.
These days, all the healing tools need to be used. So I won't go better than less than, but I will say this, that Sanskrit is a spirit language. Sanskrit is a language in which the actual sound that you're making, the vibrational resonance that you're creating, whether you're chanting out loud or you're doing it more subtly in a silent, just repeating it silently for yourself. Maybe you're not someone who wants to chant it out loud, or you're not in a space where you can, but just even that recalling, which brings again that level of thought back into someplace different. Spirit language is recognized as that vibrational resonance that brings us directly in line with divinity, whatever that divinity is for you, the universe, spirit, goddess, God, this essence that is wholeness, this essence that allows us to feel as though we are connected to something larger than just our little individual selves, right? That's the beauty of spirit language. And so in some ways, you don't really need to quote unquote know what you're chanting. If it seems unfamiliar, the sound, the word seems unfamiliar in Sanskrit, it's about the sound. So if, we see sound healing show up in so many different ways these days, whether it's with singing bowls, if you've ever even turned on music to help you change your mood or your emotion, this is a really similar kind of practice. The idea is that we're doing it for ourselves on a cellular level. We're waking up and our cells are experiencing that vibratory resonance as nourishment, as
And so there's a part of yourself that knows already. You may not logically know what the translation is, but there is a part of you at a cellular soul level that does know and does remember, because just the vibration itself is activating you in a way that raises your frequency to that level of that mantra and what that mantra means. And so there, you might not logically know, but in chanting it, you can actually feel the knowing.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, mantra is often described as self-revealing. So sometimes it's a beautiful practice to be with it and to see how it's moving through you, right? You might be experiencing abundance. You might be experiencing prosperity in your life in a very different way than I am, right? Yeah. And so there is also a personal relationship, that begins to develop with you and this certain vibration.
And I love that, because sometimes when you're told what something means, then you're trying to, whatever your definition of that is, you're trying to achieve it. And so maybe it's even better not to know what the translation is, so that you can actually just feel into it and experience it and know it for yourself, without having the mind trying to reach for something.
Yeah. Now the word mantra, it comes from two roots, the root manas, which means mind, the mind, and tra, which is often translated as to protection, weaving protection for your mind.
I love that, because some people translate it as tool. I love protection more, because it feels not like you're doing something. You're not using it to do something.
Right.
I mean, you kind of are, but it feels like when you say tool, that's like, oh, I have to do some work now.
Yeah. It's protection for our minds. Mm-hmm. The injury that we would otherwise cause to our minds.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. And it's not so much that we're trying to block or keep out, or just even destroy that which we don't want in our minds. We might transform it, but really think about mantra as this way to nourish, this way to affirm, this way to reinforce or amplify the qualities of mind that we want to cultivate within ourselves and that we want to keep safe. This feeling that I belong naturally in myself and in this larger community and world is something I want to protect. I don't want to lose that anymore. I lived for decades with the not belonging. What is it like to really tenderly cultivate? And it's great that it's, the beginning of summer, because we can see that tenderness, this new way of holding ourselves, our minds, these qualities and attributes of mind within ourselves.
So simply by, chanting this spirit language, we are strengthening the qualities of the mind that we really want to cultivate, so that when we think about ourselves or we think about other people, those qualities are coming more forward instead of the conditioning and of degrading thoughts and behaviors that we've had once become accustomed to. This is what we are becoming more accustomed to when we chant.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I am not a trained vocalist. I am not I am not a Sanskrit scholar. I am a practitioner, I'm a student, and truly share my practice because it has been both healing and transformative for me and how it is that I move through the world.
Well, for someone who is not a trained vocalist or a Sanskrit scholar, I have to say that I am so impressed. If you go to her was it Igniting Protection on Spotify, it's just beautiful, the mantras that you have. And I love listening to them. And they actually, because your voice is much prettier than mine, I find. So I've listened to that and your pronunciation is better than mine, but I'm working on that. So it's really been a great tool for me to feel connected to these mantras. So what mantra do you have for us today that you want to share?
Yeah, I would love to share what's called a seed mantra, or a bija mantra is what it's called. And it's a seed in the way that you can experience it all in a very small package, right? So we can, and I certainly do, chant longer recitations and longer mantras. This is a very small, very potent package. And it's a bija mantra called Hreem, Hreem,
Hreem.
Hreem. And it's the sound ha, which is the sound of the life force, space, right? Ha. It's the ra, fire, right? That fire within us, that self-lit light. And it's eem, which is that goddess energy, this more feminine idea of dynamic energy. So we're moving the energies, right? It's not just a static thing. It's moving through us as space, as light, as life force within us. And that theme is often described as this divine energy at the heart, where we know that prosperity and wholeness and abundance really feels potent. So this cream, we can chant it out loud. We can chant it silently, so just hearing it. I like to hear it on my breath. It's a way to connect my breathing with my mindset, which is really, what we try to do when we're doing any kind of meditative practice. Mm-hmm. And I love to do this in nature, in a place where I can really see and experience the abundance of the natural world. I'd like to do that as well.
Yeah, I love how this mantra holds within it, space and fire and this activating power of the divine feminine, all in one little word, one little Sanskrit word, yet it's so powerful. So we oftentimes want something really big to think that we need something big, but this is something small and beautiful and powerful and easy to pronounce that we can just plant right into our hearts and allow it to do the work for us, which mm-hmm. I really love. So I love also that Stephanie has prepared a tutorial and a mantra practice for anyone based on this beautiful bija mantra. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to link it to our YouTube channel and to our Facebook group, Women Thriving Unapologetically. And also, if you want to reach out to Stephanie for this link, she can be reached at stephaniecheebarea.com. So that you actually can listen to it, because it's about a 10-minute tutorial, but a shorter practice in there as well. And it's linked to the breath too. So me personally, I've been working with this actually recently, and it's been really, really powerful and a beautiful way for me to feel calm and centered and really deeply connected to what I can't see, but I can actually feel. And so I hope everyone that's listening will go to Stephanie's website, Stephanie Chee Barea, and see all the amazing things that she's doing, including the Her Festival, which I highly recommend, and go into the link that I will share with everyone in our groups so that you can experience this incredibly potent practice. And I can't believe we're already at time, Steph. I mean, this is crazy. I mean, we could talk about this stuff forever, but I so appreciate you coming on and sharing your wisdom and your experiences, and how if we start to become more aware of our languaging and do simple practices, we can start to recondition our way of being, thinking, speaking, and how to ourselves and others. And that will ripple out into our communities, and that will help us see the bigger change in the world that we want. So thank you, thank you, thank you so much. You're so amazing. And you've been listening to Women Thriving Unapologetically on Voice America's Empowerment Channel. And we are here every Thursday at 10 a.m. Eastern and 7 a.m. Pacific. So we look forward to having you here next week. And until then, many, many blessings, my friends.
Thank you, Lynsie.
You're welcome.
All right, we're all clear.
Did I go over a little, Gabe?
No, I sent the cues kind of a little early, so that way you're all good.
Oh, okay. I saw that 30 seconds, like, whoa. Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Yeah, we'll talk to you next week, Lynsie. Take care.
Okay. Thank you. So Steph, if you don't mind, I'm just going to go over the Facebook group and see if there's any questions. And I don't know why, but when I jump over, it's always frozen. So anyone that's listening that has tech advice, that would be great. So I know I'm still figuring these things out, and it just feels like it never ends. But so I don't, it's a little bit frozen there, but why I still have you here just for a few moments. We didn't get to all of the questions that we had on our list. And it rarely happens, but is there anything that we didn't cover that you would really love to share? Or do you even want to share a quick practice like right now with the group that they can do? It's up to you. What wants to come through you, Steph?
Let's do it. Let's do it. Bathe ourselves in this Hreem mantra, in this little bija mantra that packs a big punch, is often associated with the yogic goddess Lakshmi, this idea of abundance and prosperity, embodied abundance and prosperity. I like to see and feel and experience this mantra as molten gold. That's that's what feels both strengthening and illuminating for me. As I think about it, it's almost as though you could allow that cream to kind of pour down through the inner landscape of your body as you chant it. And I like to use a little bit of arm movement just to give ourselves a little more of a somatic experience.
Oh, I love that. Molten. Who doesn't want some molten gold right now?
Yes.
I'm all for that.
Yeah, fill it all in. It brings us, back to this place of receiving and we, in the sacred feminine, this idea, I don't have to be doing it. I let the mantra do me, right? I let this just be received by my cells, be received by my mind.
What a great reminder for women, like, okay, stop doing and receive. What a great practice, which can be so hard for so many of us.
And it can be a micro practice. We'll just do, 3 minutes. It doesn't have to be, it can be 30 minutes, but it can also be 3.
Okay. Well, I'm going to mute myself because if we do it together, it's going to sound really crazy for everyone listening. So
Yeah.
And I like your voice better.
No, we're not doing that.
I know, just joking. But I do. No, just kidding. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and mute, and then I'm going to let you take over.
Okay. So what's really beautiful about chanting mantra out loud is it connects us with our breath, right? We can chant only on the exhale. And for those of us who are busy in our doings and our tasks and our to-do lists, sometimes our exhale becomes a little shorter or less accessible. When we chant on the exhale out loud, we just allow ourselves then to expand into this exhale, the softening, the release of tension. So wherever you are, just let yourself soften, maybe just the muscles of your face. The space of the throat. Feel a softening move down through the space of the chest and down into the belly. And then I invite you to just place your hands over your lower belly if you're able to, just really gently. Give that belly permission to soften. Maybe even sense your breath moving down into that space. And then breathe in, nice long inhale. And as you exhale, let yourself work with this sound. Almost like a sigh here, right? Deep breath in. Ha. One more time, deep breath in. Ha. And then to this next piece, this next sound in the mantra, Hrim, Ra, 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 Ra. Deep breath in. Exhale down into the belly. Ra. Slightly more fiery element, this idea of your own self-lit light. Inhale and exhale. Ra. And then one more time. Deep breath in. Ra. And then draw your hands maybe up over the space of your hearts for this third piece of the mantra, the the space here of the Shakti, the goddess here, the space of the cells, the dynamic movement of this fire and light. Inhale through the nose, exhale. Two more, just like that. Deep breath in. Maybe even feel that vibration beneath the space of the hands. One more time, silently exhale into the heart, into the space beneath the hands. And then release the hands down. Take a deep breath in as though you could gather up all of that field of light, nourishing life force that surrounds us, that molten gold. As you inhale, draw your arms up overhead, and then exhale, bring it all down through the body, palms now facing the floor as we chant. Shower of molten gold. Deep breath in, gather all of that up. Exhale. As it washes down through you. One more before you head out into your day. Deep breath in, gather it all up. Exhale, receive. Bring yourself back. Maybe there's some of that residual resonance.
So beautiful. Thank you for taking the time to break the mantra down into 3 syllables and guiding us where we could feel it in the body, and then pulling it all together and just feeling how 3 times can shift so much within you. So I really appreciate that. And I know we didn't have a lot of time to talk about how it relates to the sacred feminine for our Women Thriving Unapologetically group, but I think they can feel that, like, it brings us back to not just our sacred feminine, but also our wholeness. I really appreciate that, Stephanie. And just, interesting, this is for my personal benefit because I have you here. Oftentimes I use this particular bija mantra for Bhuvaneshwari. And sometimes aren't these bija mantras can be used for multiple goddesses? Because is that true?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, here's the thing about bija mantra is that seed is totipotent. So it manifests in all different ways, depending on where your intention is placed even. Certainly, I love Bhuvaneshwari, this goddess of sacred space, and really, feeling into that, claiming, owning, attuning to that sacred space, and that space being fullness, right?
Yes, it's not empty.
Not empty.
Yeah, not empty at all. It's definitely very, very full of so many amazing things that if we just take that moment to, stop and pause, breathe, and chant, we can feel it. So, and I think in the feeling, there is so much more potency than just trying to look and touch something, and just allowing ourselves to be touched by something. So, yeah. So is there anything that you would like to add or share before we allow you to go back to beautiful Rangeley, Maine and do your amazing work that you're doing in the world?
Lynsie, I will share with you a little graphic. I have a little image of cream that breaks it down with definition, and so you can share that on Facebook, and certainly I believe we're in a time where sharing our healing tools just really needs to be, all of the healing tools, I should say, need to be liberated right now. So thank you for the work that you do in continuing to amplify the voices of women and the voice of the sacred feminine. And yeah, I'm here for anyone who is looking for more guidance, who has their interest piqued as to chanting, it is my offering and my love to share. So
Yes, definitely check out Igniting Protection on Spotify. It is really, really wonderful and beautiful. So you can listen to that. And as you mentioned before, you don't actually have to chant it out loud. You can just listen to it and allow that your cells to be ignited and align with the divine. And I'd failed to mention this on the radio show, but you're also on Instagram at Steph_Chee. So that's STEF_CHEE. But I'm going to put all of that in our Facebook group. And if you are on my mailing list, I will send that out in a newsletter so everyone has that. The graphic, the link to the practice that you're offering, and all of Stephanie's contact information. So get on the mailing list. So that you don't miss out on, I don't want to say don't miss out because that brings in fear or scarcity, but if it's something that resonates with you, then reach out and I'll be happy to share that with you. So thanks again, Stephanie. I so appreciate you and all that you're doing. So much, much love.
Thank you. You too.
Okay. Take care. Bye, everyone.